I love great conversations. Hi, my name is Angel Jones. Thank you for joining me on 12-minute convos where I help you create a brand of your own unique, real self. Listen in as I have conversations with amazing people from all over the world. Good night, Josh Butt. How are you going on this wonderful, beautiful night?
Very well, thank you. Yesterday was the Melbourne Cup, which in Australia is the horse race that stops the nation.
Oh, really?
So it's a public holiday in Melbourne, but the rest of the country just goes to the pub. And I lost $20.
Oh, you lost.
But it was a good day. It was fun.
Oh, well, it's a grand pleasure to connect with you, Josh. Thanks for taking the time to be here. That being said, could you make the sound of the thing that fell when we were talking in our pre-conversation? Yeah, that just sounds great. Yeah, thank you.
I love it. I love a great sound effect. I'll find a reason to bring it into the conversation.
Yeah. Wonderful. I appreciate that tremendously. But Josh, please do tell us which of your talent that you've been operating in is responsible for us connecting.
Yeah, I think you reached out because I'm not sure. I've been busy. I'm busy in a few different areas.
Sure.
Currently, I'm the head of content formats or program formats, and development at the Story Lab, which is a global entertainment business as part of the Dentsu Aegis network. But before that, I've also produced podcasts, and I've produced lots of brand-funded television and commercials. And even before that, I was a comedian and performer, and was even on community radio. So that's a long history of what I've been up to.
Yeah, it sounds as though it's been fun all the way. I'm guessing. The Story Lab. It's not been fun.
It's not always fun. I think having a creative existence, or having pursuits that are creative, means that there's a lot of very difficult and hard working times, and so it sounds fun. And there are times where it is immensely satisfying, particularly at the end of a project or as a project is coming together. But yeah, there are many difficult times.
Yeah, I could definitely connect with that. So the thing I really connected with is the podcast, The Story Lab, right? And the conversations that were going on there. The podcast, right? Is it The Story Lab? Yeah, it's The Story Lab.
So The Story Lab's where I work, but I actually produced the podcast with a radio station called Nova.
It's Nova. It's Nova.
Yeah. And so Nova, so I don't work for Nova. They hired me as a freelancer, and we put together, they had a client that they wanted to produce a podcast for called, the client is Genea, and they asked me to produce his podcast called Modern Babies, which was about IVF.
Yes.
And there was a lot of stuff out there about the topic, but it was 100% geared to females. And so what we did was we did make a show that the female audience wanted, but we also made it a little bit more male friendly. And so we had one episode in particular that was sort of geared towards men, but the rest of the series was also, if a guy wants to listen to, he would feel very comfortable listening to it. Some of the other stuff might not necessarily be as comfortable for men. Anyway, that show has gone on to a second series, and it's been very successful. I'm not a part of that second series because I took my new job, and so I no longer could do the show, but it's very successful. And Nova really did produce a great podcast, and the client seemed very happy.
Intriguing. Yeah. Well, I got to listening Modern Babies. I'm guessing the episode I clicked on was the one that was definitely geared to the male audience, right? Because
was that the one where I had a test?
Oh no, you were not on it. So I was wondering, okay, what episode is Josh in, right? So this one is where one lady is speaking about donors, right? And how that looks, and they were sharing the stories on how a woman that couldn't have babies, that got the opportunity to have babies, felt and they had like the children in the background in certain parts. So it was really great. Like emotionally, I was stirred.
That sounds like one of the episodes. Yeah, that sounds like one of the episodes that Jess would have been producing, and she's amazing.
Yeah.
And very lucky to be working with her and the rest of the team there. But I'm not sure if that was that might have been the second season, which she sort of took the lead on after I had to drop out, which is unfortunate. But that's what happens in the creative world. Sometimes you have to say no, and you spend a lot of time being very upset that you had to say no, but because you're unavailable, and that bothers me almost as much as a project that doesn't do well is saying no to a project that I really enjoyed doing. But that's just part of the business, I guess.
Yeah, it's part of life, right? It's definitely part of life. So in Story Lab, tell me what you're doing there, please.
So I produce and distribute television formats. So we either make them ourselves or we work with our production partners or production companies and television networks to produce TV or content series, maybe films for networks as part of our business unit. And so we're essentially investing and distributing and making television shows on locally, so in my market or globally, depending on the project. We're part of a much bigger team, the Story Lab, and the story side of our business also does content strategy and content production and content sponsorships, like television sponsorships.
Yeah.
And so, we're a wonderful content business. We're global. We're in over 20 countries. It's a great team, and one I'm very lucky to be part of it.
Well, just please do tell me one other thing that you have done consistently over the last 3 years.
So I'm always pitching. I'm always pitching. I've never stopped pitching for I would say it's not even 3 years. It's nearly 20 years.
Wow.
Whether it's when I was a kid, it was radio shows or television shows, and then as I got older, it was trying to be a writer in Hollywood or New York, and it was just always pitching myself and my TV shows to networks. And then when we were trying to finance our TV shows, it's trying to pitch to investors or distribution companies. And then, when you're trying to find work, you're pitching yourself.
Yeah.
And then when you get into a big company like I am now, I'm pitching to our brother and sister companies, and I'm pitching to the networks, and just always pitching. It's just the business. You always got to be selling your project, trying to get people interested, partner up, working together, because no matter what you're doing, you're never doing it alone. You're always part of a team. Even if you're leading that team or a part of that team, it's a team that comes together to make a project.
Yeah, it's an intriguing positioning in the thought processes, if you would, to position yourself as the person that's always pitching. How does it make you feel?
Yeah, I think if you just remember that you're always trying to convince people to become part of your project, it makes you bring your best self to work a bit.
Yeah. How does it make you feel, Josh, doing that?
When you've got a great project that you really believe in, it's very easy. The difficult part is when the project's like a sensible business project, or it's someone else's project and they've asked for you to help, and you believe in it and you think it's a great project and it's worthwhile, but you're not necessarily as invested, or you've had some roadblocks along the way and it's a bit more of a challenge. And I think sometimes those ones can be more difficult because you've really got to push it a lot further, and it feels like you're selling. I think when it feels like you're selling, you need to stop and reset why it feels like that. I think they're the hard ones.
Yeah, I love that. In the podcast, in this particular segment of the podcast, I plug basically my book, right? One of my workbooks, but it's totally connected to what I want to create, or at least help create, right? But it doesn't feel like selling. Now, there's there's a 10% part of me that says this is selling, but it still is motivated, or I'm pushed more by the fact that this brings great value. Is it similar with you?
Yeah, because if you can easily identify who your audience is, whether that's a huge audience or a really small audience, and you know why they want it, you go, right, well, I'll just give them what they want, and therefore it's not selling.
Yeah.
They want this. And if you believe in it, like you do with your book, you go, I believe in this. I think it's great. There's a group of people who want it. So I'll just go start with that.
Yeah.
And then once you start to get some traction and you start to find that audience, then you go to the next audience. You're like, hey, this audience really likes this.
Yeah.
Do you think this audience is going to like this too? I think maybe they could. And then maybe you start selling a little bit, but before you know it, again, you believe in it, they believe in it, and it loses the sell.
Yeah. Well, hey, amazing audience. We are live with Josh Butt. You could definitely check him out. He is the head of program format and development at the Story Lab. Josh, where would you point people to if they wanted to connect with you, or even Story Lab?
So there's 20 offices around the world. I'm in Australia. I'm in Sydney. But you can LinkedIn, or LinkedIn's pretty good. Yeah. I think I like LinkedIn. It's the right forum for business conversations.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, Josh, let's switch gears for a moment now, and let me invite you into my time machine that is surrounded with beautiful, warm, blue Caribbean water. The thing noise should have come in there, like.
Hang on. I've got a noise.
There we go. Josh, please do tell me, what is your earliest childhood memory?
I think it's playing tennis with my grandfather when I was about 3 years old.
Intriguing. Why do you think this memory is so clear?
I had to think about it. I don't think it's that clear. I think, I had to go looking for it.
Yeah.
But I think it's clear because, when you're really little, playing sport or being, with someone who's so much older, and they have, grandparents have a mystical, they're a superhuman person to you at that age, and they can do no wrong. I think, that time is so precious in your life.
Yeah, that's intriguing. Well, hey, can I offer an interpretation to the thought picture you created in my mind?
Sure, please. Thank you.
I love the idea of what happens in tennis. And is it table tennis or is it lawn tennis?
No. It was tennis like in the French Open, the Antica, the red clay, red clay one.
Red clay. Okay, cool. Yeah, I love the idea of what's happening, right? Which is a conversation, if you would, of what is the intention. So if the intention is, hey, I'm going to beat you, then you're definitely going to see that in the actions, right? And I'm saying all of that to say the sales conversation, or just the conversation, full stop, period, that occurs, and the teaching via that medium, if you would. So it's action versus action, but there's just a grand communication that's occurring. You serve, right? You first start by serving, right? In the tennis match, and then there's the set point, if you would. I just love how that connected in my mind in that thought picture.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like when you learn that from a really young age from someone who's older, it starts so simply. It's just hitting the ball. But you're right, there's a much bigger conversation that happens very soon. The second you know how to hit the ball, then you want to know how to beat the other player. And
exactly.
I think that's why that moment. I played tennis for many, many years. I loved tennis as a child. So maybe it was. I'm sure it was very important in my childhood.
And if we forward to when you were 12 years old, what was your favorite song?
It would have been. It wasn't a song. It was an album. Right. It was Billy Joel Live in Russia.
Yeah, cool. I've never heard that.
It's got a red album. I don't know how to pronounce the word, but it actually means concert in Russian. I think he was live in Moscow. It's got Angry Young Man and Stiletto, and my cousin Dione is an amazing piano player, and she taught me how to play those 2 songs, and they're really cool songs.
Sweet.
There's a lot there for a piano player. And so I used to listen to that on repeat really loudly.
Sweet. All right. Well, Josh, my friend, we've arrived at our destination. But before we get off of this time machine, there's a small declaration form. So it's yes or no, possibly a bit more. We're going to move pretty quickly here. Are you ready, Josh?
I'm ready. Thank you.
Josh, have you chosen someone to pass on your skills to?
Anyone who will listen.
Are you married?
In January, I will be.
Ooh, congratulations on your engagement. Do you have children?
In April, I will have one.
Wow, you're just doing things in the future. Do you believe in God?
Hard to say.
Do you have an inner circle of friends?
I've got the same circle of friends from when I was about 3 years old.
Wow,
I'm really lucky.
Wow. Do you watch TV for more than 3 hours a day?
No, I used to, but I don't anymore.
How about 3 hours a week?
Not between TV and film, sort of, yes.
All right, yeah, let's do screen time, the phone and the computer. More than 8 or less than 8?
More than 10.
Okay.
I'm glued to it.
Yeah. Well, Josh, after 1,001 conversations in 3 months in 2016, I came up with a workbook, the name of it being called Yours, which stands for your own unique real self. And the idea is you answer questions that, through self-reflection, connect you to your own unique real statement, aka your mission. If you had to share with us, Josh, your own unique real statement, a statement that represents who Josh Butt is, what would you say that is?
Continuous improvement and lots of fun.
Love it. I love the fun part. Well, Josh, this has been a great pleasure, my friend. Before you leave, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
The one thing I've been learning is just to be yourself.
Yeah, love it. Josh, hey, thank you for being on what is inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones.
Angel, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat to you.
Thank you for being on 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. Stay tuned for more from our advertisers.
Diabetes is a mountain pandemic. It's a disease that's not acute but chronic. Similar to this rhyming method, I have simplified the definition, the signs and symptoms, and the complications of diabetes for both adults and children in my books, Poems for Patients, A Focus on Diabetes, and The ABCs of Diabetes for Children. These books are available on Amazon.com, and for more information, you can visit my website, poemsbyaj.com. That's poemsbyaj.com.